The morning sun streamed through the tall courthouse windows, illuminating the polished oak benches and glinting off the silver badge of Officer Daniel Harris. His canine partner, Rex, sat alertly at his side, tail curled neatly around his paws. Harris had been in hundreds of courtrooms before, but something about today felt heavier, like the air itself was waiting to hear what this small child might say. At the front of the room sat a little girl named Emma Clark, just 3 years old, her tiny hands clutching a worn teddy bear. Her shoes dangled off the chair, not even touching the floor. Beside her sat her mother, Allison, her face pale and trembling. Every so often, she'd reach over and smooth her daughter's hair, whispering something that only Emma could hear. The case had already drawn national attention. Headlines across the country had called it the Miracle in the Woods. 3 months earlier, Emma had been found after being missing for 2 days during a thunderstorm that had ripped through northern Oregon. The search had stretched the limits of local law enforcement, and by the second night, even the most seasoned officers were preparing for the worst. But then Rex found her. Harris remembered every second of that night: the mud, the cold rain soaking through his vest, the roar of thunder so loud rattled his bones. He'd almost called off the search when Rex suddenly barked, a deep, sharp sound that cut through the chaos. He followed his partner's lead into the dark forest, his flashlight beam dancing through the rain. And there she was, curled beneath a fallen log, trembling and barely conscious, her tiny body pressed against Rex's chest as if he were shielding her from the storm. The paramedics later said that if Rex hadn't found her when he did, she wouldn't have made it through the night. Now, months later, they were here to face the man accused of leaving her there, her mother's ex-boyfriend, a man named Ryan Calloway. He sat across the room, dressed in a dark suit, eyes fixed on the table. Every so often he glanced up, but when he did, his gaze always darted away from Emma. The prosecutor, a sharp and steady woman named Diane Porter, rose to speak. "Your Honor, we'd like to proceed with the testimony of the victim's mother." Allison nodded nervously, her voice trembling as she took the stand. I trusted him," she began, her eyes flicking toward Ryan. "I thought he loved us. But that night, when I came home and Emma was gone, I just knew." Her voice cracked and tears filled her eyes. "He said he took her for a drive. Said he wanted to teach her not to cry so much. I never imagined." The defense attorney objected. The judge, a calm man with gray hair and tired eyes, sustained it softly. But the damage was already done. The room could feel the truth pulsing between every heartbeat. When Allison finished, Diane turned to the judge. "Your Honor, with permission, we'd like to show the court the video of Officer Harris and Canine Rex locating the child." The lights dimmed. The courtroom projector flickered to life, casting moving shadows across the walls. The footage was raw bodycam video from Harris's vest, showing the frantic search through rain and darkness. The sound of his breath filled the speakers, heavy and desperate. Then, suddenly, Rex barked and sprinted off screen. The camera followed, stumbling through brush and mud. And then Emma. Her tiny figure appeared beneath the log, Rex lying protectively beside her. The audience gasped softly, a collective sound of relief and disbelief. Even the judge's eyes glistened. In the back, reporters typed silently, some forgetting for a moment that they were supposed to be objective. When the lights came back on, the room seemed changed, quieter, heavier. Emma looked up at the screen, then at Rex, tilting her head as if recognizing something deep in her heart. The judge leaned forward gently. "Ms. Clark," he said softly, "does Emma wish to speak?" Allison hesitated. She's only 3, Your Honor. I don't want to scare her." "It's all right," the judge replied. "She doesn't need to be afraid here." The bailiff helped Emma down from her seat and guided her toward the front. The little girl's shoes squeaked softly against the courtroom floor. Harris's heart pounded in his chest as she approached. She was so small, so fragile, and yet, in that moment, she carried the weight of every truth that had not yet been spoken. Emma stopped in the middle of the room. Her wide, innocent eyes scanned the faces around her, some kind, some cold, some broken. Then, slowly, she turned toward the back. Her gaze landed on Rex. The courtroom fell completely silent. She pointed a tiny finger toward him. "Doggy," she whispered, her voice so quiet that only those closest could hear at first. "Doggy found me." Harris felt something crack inside his chest. He knelt instinctively, Rex's leash still in his hand. The big German shepherd stood, tail wagging softly, head tilted. Emma's face lit up with a smile so pure that even the judge couldn't help but smile back. Then she said something that made the entire room freeze. "He kept me warm." Reporters dropped their pens. Allison covered her mouth with her hands, tears spilling down her cheeks. Harris blinked rapidly, replaying her words in his mind. "He kept me warm." No one had told Emma what had happened that night, how Rex had wrapped himself around her, how his body heat had kept her alive when the temperature had dropped below freezing. The judge leaned back slowly, visibly moved. "Officer Harris," he said quietly, "is that true?" Harris swallowed hard. "Yes, Your Honor. When we found her, Rex was curled around her body. He didn't leave her side, not even when the medics arrived." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Even the defendant shifted uneasily in his seat. Emma, unaware of the emotion she'd stirred, ran to Rex and threw her arms around his neck. Rex responded with a soft, protective nuzzle. The child giggled for the first time in months, a sound that filled the room with something no verdict ever could. Hope. The judge took off his glasses, eyes glassy. "Let the record reflect," he said slowly, "that this department's K-9 officer not only located the child, but ensured her survival through the night." Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered. But Harris didn't care about any of that. All he saw was the little girl hugging his partner, the dog who had done what no human could. Outside, the world buzzed with headlines and speculation. Inside, however, it was quiet, peaceful, almost sacred. Emma held on to Rex like he was her anchor to the world, the bridge between trauma and trust. And as Harris stood there, hand on Rex's collar, he realized something profound. This wasn't just about catching a criminal. It was about a child who had learned, in the darkest night imaginable, that heroes don't always wear badges. They sometimes have fur, paws, and the purest hearts on earth. But Harris didn't know yet that Emma's simple words, "He kept me warm," would soon unravel a truth that no one in that courtroom was prepared to face. The courtroom remained hushed long after the judge's gavel echoed. Even as people began to rise from their seats, no one spoke above a whisper. The image of a tiny child hugging the police dog lingered in every mind like a haunting photograph. Officer Daniel Harris sat motionless, one hand resting on Rex's head. The German shepherd stayed perfectly still, eyes calm and focused, as if he too sensed that something important had just shifted. The air around them felt sacred, like a church after prayer. Reporters began moving toward the doors, cameras flashing. Harris ignored them. He couldn't stop replaying Emma's voice in his head. "He kept me warm." It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Soft, certain, uncoached. She hadn't been told to say those words. They came straight from memory. The human memory might twist, but a child's didn't know how to lie about comfort. As the court recessed for lunch, the prosecutor, Diane Porter, approached Harris quietly. "You all right, officer?" she asked, eyes searching his face. He nodded slowly. "Just didn't expect that. She's..." Tougher than most adults I've seen take the stand. Diane smiled faintly. Kids surprise us that way. Her smile faded as she glanced toward the defense table, where Ryan Calloway was speaking in low tones to his attorney. But we still need something stronger, she murmured. Emotion isn't evidence. Harris followed her gaze. He's not breaking. No, Diane agreed. And if the jury starts feeling sorry for him, because of how young he is, because he looks like he's holding it together, we might lose this. Harris's jaw tightened. Then I'll make sure we don't. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered reporters, local residents, a handful of animal rescue volunteers holding "Thank you, Rex" posters. The story had exploded across every major network. K9 hero saves missing girl. But to Harris, the attention felt wrong. It wasn't about medals or headlines. Something about that night kept gnawing at him, like a splinter he couldn't reach. He had written the report himself, every detail double-checked. Yet the footage, the part before the rescue, had always felt off. There was a minute missing. A tiny slice of time the body cam didn't capture. At the time, he chalked it up to the storm signal interference, moisture on the lens. But now, after Emma's quiet words, that missing minute burned in his mind. Rex tugged gently at the leash, drawing Harris back to the present. The dog's ears perked. He was watching something across the street. It was Emma and her mother, walking out of the courthouse, flanked by two social workers. Emma turned and spotted Rex instantly. Her face lit up like morning sun. "Doggy," she called, voice bright. Harris knelt down. "Go on, boy." Rex bounded forward, tail wagging. Emma giggled and hugged him tightly. Allison, her mother, wiped at her eyes, half smiling. "Officer Harris," she said softly, "I don't know how to thank you. You and Rex. You saved my little girl's life." Harris shook his head. "Rex did all the saving. I just followed him." Allison nodded, then hesitated. "She still has nightmares," she admitted. "But when she sees him your partner, she sleeps better. Draws him all the time. I think he's the only one she really trusts." That last word landed heavier than she intended. Trust. Harris felt it in his chest. Children trusted instinctively. When something was safe, they just knew. After they left, he crouched beside Rex, rubbing behind the dog's ear. "You did good, partner. Real good." Rex leaned into his hand, letting out a low, contented rumble. That night, Harris sat in his apartment, lights off except for the glow from his laptop screen. The news was looping the same footage, Emma pointing at Rex, the courtroom in tears. Every station had given it a name, the little girl and her hero dog. He muted the TV and opened his old case folder. Rain rattled against the window. Somewhere down the hall, a faucet dripped rhythmically. The photos stared back at him, muddy footprints, shredded leaves, the fallen log. The paramedic's note: hypothermia onset. Core temp dangerously low. Time found: 2:43 a.m. Harris leaned closer. Something caught his eye, a photo he hadn't noticed before. The search team's wide shot of the area. Behind the log, barely visible under shadows, there was a second disturbance in the mud, another print, small but distinct. He zoomed in. It wasn't a child's. Too large, too angular. Barefoot, maybe. His stomach turned. He flipped through the rest. No one had noted it in the report. The evidence bag from that area had gone missing before forensics arrived, lost in the storm chaos. Or so the record said. He exhaled slowly. "What did we miss, Rex?" The dog, lying nearby on his bed, lifted his head. His brown eyes reflected the laptop's light, deep and steady. "You found her," Harris murmured, "but you kept barking after I picked her up. You weren't done, were you?" Rex's tail gave a single thump. The next morning, Harris requested temporary access to the evidence vault under the pretext of reviewing files for the prosecution. He doubted anyone would question him. Everyone loved the K9 hero right now. Inside the vault, the air was cold and metallic, smelling faintly of gun oil and dust. Harris located the Clark file, its edges still marked with the search unit's code. Everything seemed in order, except for one thing. The original field recorder was missing. The sergeant on duty frowned when Harris asked. "Probably got corrupted in the rain," he said. "It happens. Did we ever recover any partial audio?" The sergeant hesitated, then nodded. "A minute or two? Nothing usable. Mostly static. Can I listen?" He handed over a small drive. "Don't expect much." That night, Harris played it on his laptop. At first, it was just white noise, the hiss and crackle of wind. Then faintly, through the storm, came something else. A voice, soft, trembling. Not his own. Not the suspect's. A woman's. "Can't. Please help." Then a muffled bark. Rex's bark. And silence. Harris froze, heart hammering. He replayed it, turned up the volume. The voice vanished under distortion, but he caught it again, 3 distinct words. Right before Rex barked, "Don't hurt her." He sat back, the room spinning slightly. The timeline didn't make sense. The suspect, Ryan, had already been arrested when the storm footage ended. So who was the woman? Rex stood suddenly, ears pricked toward the window, as if sensing Harris's unease. "Yeah," Harris whispered, rubbing his temples. "I heard it too." He leaned back in his chair and looked out the window at the rain-blurred city lights. The truth he'd thought was solid was starting to crack. The news, the courtroom, the applause, it all painted a picture of a hero dog and a rescued child. But beneath it, something darker stirred. Someone else had been in those woods that night, someone whose voice was lost in the storm. And Emma Sweet, innocent Emma, might be the only one who remembered. The next morning, Harris arrived at the precinct before dawn. He stood in front of the evidence board, coffee cooling beside him, and began pinning photos again, maps, timelines, footprints. He stared at Emma's drawing, which Allison had given him as a thank you. It showed Rex beside her, under a big yellow sun. But in the corner, drawn in faint crayon lines, there was another figure, a small person standing behind a tree. He hadn't noticed that before. Rex sat beside him, tail gently sweeping the floor. Harris looked down. "You see it too, huh?" The dog tilted his head, eyes steady. Harris took a long breath. The trial would resume in a few days. The world already thought the story was over. But as far as he and Rex were concerned, it had only just begun. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the streets of Portland glistening like black glass. Officer Daniel Harris drove slowly to the precinct, his mind running in circles. Every detail from the night of Emma's disappearance had been burned into his memory. The pounding storm, the mud sucking at his boots, and Rex's unrelenting determination. Yet now, that memory felt incomplete, as if a crucial scene had been edited out of the story. Harris parked near the back of the building, avoiding the flashing lights and reporters gathered outside. He wanted to be alone, to focus on the thread that gnawed at him, the missing minute of footage, the faint voice on the recorder, the shadow of another presence in Emma's drawing. Inside the evidence room, the metallic smell of old files and chemical residue clung to the air. Harris switched on the overhead fluorescent lights, illuminating shelves stacked with boxes labeled in neat, uniform handwriting. He pulled the Clark file from the top shelf, careful not to disturb the others. He spread the photographs across the metal table. Footprints in the mud, Rex's paw prints leading to the fallen log, the storm-battered tree branches. Everything made sense except for one photo taken by a volunteer from the search team. It showed a faint outline behind a tree, a shape smaller than Ryan Calloway, but larger than Emma. Something had moved behind the tree, or someone had been there. Harris rubbed his forehead. "Rex," he whispered, kneeling to scratch the dog behind the ears. "I don't know what we missed that night, but I think we missed someone." Rex leaned against his hand, calm, confident, and somehow aware. The bond between man and dog wasn't new. They'd worked together for years, but today, it felt like they shared a secret that no one else could understand. Later, Harris returned to the forest under the cover of morning fog. The storm had left everything slick and reflective. Puddles mirrored the skeletal trees above. He stepped carefully, crunching leaves and twigs beneath his boots. Rex ran ahead, nose to the ground, scanning for a scent that Harris couldn't see. Harris reviewed the night in his mind. The frantic calls, the helicopters overhead, the paramedics' rushed instructions. Then he remembered the sound from the partial body cam, faint but distinct. A woman's voice pleading, "Don't hurt her." He followed Rex deeper into the woods, past the fallen log where Emma had been found. Rex paused suddenly, ears pricked, sniffing the air. Harris crouched beside him. The dog's tail wagged once, then stiffened. Something was there. Harris stepped closer to the wet underbrush. Mud clung to his boots, and his flashlight barely penetrated the shadows. And then he saw it. A small rusted locket, partially buried beneath leaves, engraved with delicate initials. EC. He picked it up carefully, turning it over in his hands. Inside was a photograph, not of Emma alone, but of Emma and a tiny boy, barely older than she was. His breath caught. He hadn't known Emma had a sibling, let alone that anyone else had been in the forest that night. Rex barked softly and pawed at another part of the ground. Harris knelt to look, shining his flashlight over the disturbed earth. Another footprint, small and barefoot, led toward a narrow creek, then disappeared into thick mud. Harris swallowed hard. This wasn't just Ryan, he muttered. Someone else was here. Someone who didn't want Emma hurt. Back at the precinct, Harris pored over the old reports and interviews. He compared search notes, volunteer testimonies, even emails sent by local rescue teams. No one mentioned a second child. No one had reported hearing another voice. And the original paramedics insisted they'd only seen Emma. Yet Harris couldn't shake the evidence. The locket, the photograph, the footprints. Someone had been hidden in plain sight or had escaped notice entirely. And the faint voice on the body cam? It had to belong to that person. Harris pulled out the missing evidence report. The drive with the partial body cam footage had supposedly been destroyed due to water damage. But a backup copy had been archived by a different unit. He requested immediate access, citing review for prosecution. The sergeant granted it without question. Everyone still considered this case closed after the heroic media coverage. That evening, Harris played the recovered audio repeatedly. Static hissed and crackled, but beneath it, he could make out faint breathing, whispering, and a series of soft whimpers. And then the bark of Rex, repeated twice, as if the dog was responding to someone's call. He paused. The whispering voice, soft, desperate, was not Emma's, not Ryan's, not Allison's. Someone else had been in those woods. Close enough for Rex to respond, close enough that the child's life depended on it. Harris felt a chill creep up his spine. "Rex," he whispered, crouching beside the dog, "we've got more work to do." Rex tilted his head, as though understanding perfectly. The next morning, Harris returned to the courthouse, not as an officer, but as a man haunted by questions. He reviewed court transcripts from the day before, looking for anything that might have slipped past. He noticed Emma's drawings, given to him by Allison as a thank you. Among the bright scribbles of Rex in trees, one figure caught his attention, a small silhouette, barely outlined, standing behind a tree. He felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The drawing wasn't just imagination. Children rarely invent such details about traumatic events. They remember, even if they can't articulate the full truth. Harris requested a meeting with Allison. She was hesitant at first, but agreed. They sat quietly in her living room, Emma playing quietly with Rex at her side. Harris gently showed Allison the photograph in the locket. "Allison," he began, voice calm, "does Emma have a twin? Another sibling?" Allison shook her head, confusion and horror mixing on her face. "No, I mean, yes, I had a boy. Years ago. He didn't survive. The hospital said he was stillborn." Her hands trembled as she spoke. "Why? Why are you showing me this?" Harris watched her reaction carefully. "This locket was found at the scene. There's a photograph of Emma. And a boy. Someone else may have been there the night she disappeared." Allison's eyes filled with tears. "That's impossible. It's been 3 years." "How who?" Harris gently interrupted. "I don't know yet. But I need you to tell me everything Emma might have mentioned. Anything unusual about her play, her talk, or even her drawings." For hours, Allison recalled every detail. Emma sometimes spoke about a boy in the woods, always pointing toward the corner of her room. She had drawn him before bedtime. Small, almost invisible in crayon, yet she always included him in her stories of the rescue. Harris realized that Emma's subconscious had remembered more than anyone had noticed. Rex had not just found her, he had protected both children. And the presence of this unknown boy might explain why the rescue had been so complicated, why certain evidence had gone missing, and why the body cam recorded a faint woman's voice. Harris felt a weight settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just about bringing Ryan to justice anymore. This was about uncovering a hidden truth, one that had been buried for 3 years, tangled in lies, fear, and silence. As night fell, Harris returned to his apartment. Rex lay nearby, watching intently. Harris spread out the evidence photographs, locket, audio transcripts, and Emma's drawings. Every piece pointed to the same unsettling reality. The forest that night held a secret no one had expected. Harris rubbed his eyes. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "we find out who was really there." Rex stood, nudging the locket with his nose, then rested his head on Harris's knee. His brown eyes were steady, confident, and unwavering. Harris knew one thing for certain. They weren't finished yet. Not by a long shot. The truth was waiting in the shadows of the forest, and this time it would not stay hidden. Before dawn, Portland was quiet, wrapped in a thin layer of fog. Officer Daniel Harris drove alone to the edge of the forest where Emma had been found. Rex sat alert in the passenger seat, ears pricked and tail lightly swishing. The dog had sensed the same tension Harris felt, a weight of unspoken truths lingering in the damp morning air. Harris parked near the trailhead, leaving the car running as he stepped onto the slick, leaf-strewn path. The storm from 3 months ago had left deep gouges in the soil, remnants of mud tracks, and broken branches that still smelled of wet earth. Every footprint had been recorded, yet one set had been missed, small, faint, and barefoot. He looked down at Rex. "We follow them today," he said softly. The dog's eyes glimmered in the weak light, as if acknowledging the gravity of the task. The path led them into the heart of the forest, where light barely touched the ground and the trees stood like silent sentinels. Harris replayed the night in his mind, the storm, the barking, the distant flashes of flashlight beams. He remembered the exact moment Rex had broken off the main trail, barking sharply toward the fallen log where Emma had curled beneath it. Rex veered off again, now, nose to the ground. Harris followed, careful not to step too heavily. The dog stopped suddenly at a shallow depression near a creek, sniffing intently. Harris knelt beside the spot and shone his flashlight over the wet mud. Another footprint, small, barefoot, almost invisible, partially washed away by rain. But it was there, clear enough for Harris to feel a cold thrill of realization. This was the boy from the photograph in the locket, the shadow in Emma's drawings. He had been there. Harris's pulse quickened. "Rex, stay alert." The dog barked softly, then bolted a few feet ahead, tail straight and ears forward. Harris ran to catch up, tripping over roots, slipping in mud, heart pounding. Ahead, a fallen tree created a natural barricade. Rex circled it, sniffing along the roots. Harris crouched and saw something half buried beneath leaves. A second locket, smaller than the first. Rusted, almost blackened from exposure. Harris gently pried it open. Inside, a photograph, a tiny boy, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent cry, arms reaching upward. And beside him, a faint outline of a woman, her face blurred, holding him protectively. Harris's breath caught. Someone was here, and she was hiding him. Back at the precinct, Harris compiled a new timeline, combining search records, volunteer reports, and the rediscovered evidence. It was painstaking work. Every minute mattered. He cross-referenced timestamps from the partial body cam, the paramedics' notes, and the locket photographs. And slowly, a new pattern emerged. The woman the voice captured faintly in the corrupted footage had been alone with the boy, possibly for hours. She had stayed hidden from everyone, including Ryan Calloway, whose presence had distracted the search teams. Rex's barking, which had seemed random at the time, had been a signal, responding instinctively to her scent. Harris leaned back in his chair, exhaustion pressing down on him. He rubbed his eyes. "Rex," he said softly, stroking the dog's fur, "we're not just finding Emma's truth anymore. We're uncovering theirs." Rex leaned into his hand, calm, almost solemn, as if he understood. The next day, Harris met with Allison privately at her home. Emma sat nearby, coloring quietly, Rex at her feet. Harris showed Allison the second locket. She gasped. I don't understand," she whispered. "That's impossible. That boy he died before I was even pregnant with Emma." Her hands shook. Who would hide a child there? Harris leaned forward. "That's what we need to find out. Emma remembers more than anyone realized. She drew him. She drew the woman. And Rex, he responded to the presence. The child was there that night, alive." Allison's eyes filled with tears. "I never knew," she said. I thought Ryan did this alone." Harris shook his head. "It wasn't just him. Someone else was hiding in the shadows. And we need to find out who before it's too late." That evening, Harris returned to the forest once more. This time with more equipment. GPS devices, rope, flashlights, and a small camera to document every inch of the terrain. Rex bounded ahead, nose pressed to the wet ground, tail stiff and alert. Harris followed, careful, methodical, tracing the faint trail left by the boy's footprints and disturbed foliage. Hours passed. Darkness fell, shrouding the forest in a cloak of shadows. Harris's flashlight cut narrow beams through thick fog. Every rustle of leaves made his pulse quicken. Then suddenly, Rex stopped. His ears pricked, his body rigid. Harris froze. From the shadows ahead, a figure emerged, small, barely visible. A woman. She held something close to her chest. Harris's breath caught. Rex growled softly, but not aggressively. He didn't advance. He merely watched, alert and protective. The woman stepped back, her eyes wide, recognizing the presence of the search officer. Harris raised his hand slowly, "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "I just want to help." For a long moment, she didn't respond. Then, slowly, she placed a small bundle on the ground. A child stirred within a boy, pale, shivering, but alive. Harris's heart pounded. "My God," he whispered. Rex sat down beside the boy, nuzzling him gently. The child opened his eyes, blinking at the flashlight's glare. He whispered something faintly, incomprehensible, before resting his head back on the bundle. The woman finally spoke, her voice trembling. He's all that's left. I didn't want anyone to find us. Not the authorities. Not anyone. I just wanted him to be safe." Harris nodded slowly. "You're safe now," he said. "We'll make sure of it. But we need your help to understand everything." By midnight, Harris had the woman and the boy secured in a safe location, with medical staff on hand. She gave her name Margaret Hayes and began to recount the events of that fateful night. Her story was chilling. Ryan Calloway had been part of a larger network of child traffickers operating quietly, preying on vulnerable families. The boy Emma's twin brother, taken at birth, had survived, hidden by Margaret after she discovered the network's plan. She had remained in the woods with him, relying on Rex's instinctive rescue and Emma's survival to ensure that no one else came looking in the wrong place. Harris listened in stunned silence. Every word painted a larger, more terrifying picture than he had imagined. The missing evidence, the faint voice on the body cam, the boy in the drawings, it all connected. Rex hadn't just saved Emma. He had unknowingly safeguarded the life of a child no one else knew existed. By the time dawn broke, the full story was beginning to emerge. But Harris knew the fight wasn't over. They had uncovered the first layer of a dark secret one that would require courage, precision, and unbreakable trust between man and dog to bring to light. Rex lay beside Harris, ears flicking toward every sound. Harris knew one thing for certain. The forest had kept its secrets long enough. But now, with Emma, Rex, and the truth beginning to surface, nothing could stop them from uncovering the full story. The courthouse buzzed with whispers as Officer Daniel Harris walked in, Rex at his side. News of the missing boy's discovery had leaked overnight, and reporters, photographers, and spectators crowded the halls. Cameras flashed as Harris passed, but he paid little attention. His mind was focused on what was about to happen inside, revealing a truth the courtroom had never been prepared to hear. Inside, the judge adjusted his glasses and nodded at Harris. "You may proceed," he said quietly. The room was tense. Ryan Calloway sat at the defense table, expression unreadable, hands clenched. The prosecutor, Diane Porter, rose to her feet, eyes on Harris. Harris took a deep breath. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the court," he began, voice steady. "What you saw yesterday, the bravery of this K-9 officer, Rex, saved the life of one child. But it didn't end there." Gasps spread through the courtroom. Allison clutched Emma's hand, her knuckles white. Emma sat quietly, watching Rex with wide eyes, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. Harris clicked a remote, and the projector screen lit up with photographs of the forest, the footprints, the disturbed mud, and the fallen log where Emma had been found. Then he showed the first locket, open to reveal the photograph of Emma and the boy. There was another child in the forest, Harris continued, voice firm. One who had been hidden, protected, and ultimately saved by Rex's instincts. "This boy," he said, turning to face the screen, "is Emma's twin brother." The courtroom erupted into murmurs, disbelief spreading like wildfire. Ryan's attorney sprang to his feet, shouting, "Objection! This has no relevance." "Silence," the judge commanded. His gavel struck hard. "Continue, Officer Harris." Harris nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "This child, whose name is James, was taken at birth and hidden by Margaret Hayes, a woman who remained in the forest to protect him. He was found yesterday, alive and in good condition. Margaret, seated in the back with social workers, looked pale but resolute. She had been briefed that revealing her identity in court would be necessary to secure James's safety, but she still trembled at the weight of the room's eyes. Harris continued, showing the second locket with the photograph of James and Margaret. The suspect, Ryan Calloway, was not acting alone that night. There was a network organized and careful preying on vulnerable families. Margaret acted to protect the child, and Rex, responding instinctively, ensured both children's survival. Allison gasped, tears spilling freely. Emma squeezed Rex's paw, leaning against him for comfort. Her small hand trembled, but her eyes gleamed with recognition. She understood, at least in part, that Rex had saved not only her, but someone she had unknowingly imagined in her drawings. The prosecutor stood, pointing to Ryan. This man, Calloway, left Emma to die. But we now understand that his reach was broader. This evidence shows premeditation, coordination, and malice beyond what we first believed. Ryan's face paled, his composure cracking. He looked at the photographs, then at Margaret, and finally at the boy, who sat quietly beside her, pale but unharmed. For the first time, he appeared genuinely afraid. The judge leaned forward, voice measured. Margaret Hayes, the court recognizes your actions saved a child's life. The evidence presented here today changes the scope of this case. We will need to investigate fully before proceeding with sentencing. Harris nodded, but his focus remained on Rex, who lay quietly, ears twitching as if aware of the heavy weight of the revelation. The dog had performed beyond instinct. He had responded to a hidden truth that no human could have detected on their own. Outside the courtroom, reporters clamored for interviews, but Harris stepped aside. He didn't need to explain. The world already knew Rex had saved lives, but they didn't yet understand the depth of his actions. That night, Harris returned to the precinct. He pored over the case files, timelines, and photographs again. Every detail from the forest, every footprint, every locket, now formed a coherent narrative. Emma's testimony, however fragmented, had been accurate. Her memory, her drawings, and her instincts were validated by the physical evidence. He placed the two lockets side by side on the desk. One contained Emma's photograph with Rex's paw prints nearby. The other held James with Margaret beside him. The parallels were undeniable. Two children, separated by circumstances and terror, both protected in ways only a K-9 partner's intuition could guarantee. Rex nudged the lockets with his nose, then sat back, head tilted, watching Harris. The dog's calm confidence was a stark contrast to the chaos the case had unearthed. Harris knew that without Rex, neither child might have survived long enough to reveal the truth. The next morning, social services arrived to document James's status. Margaret recounted her story again, this time under official scrutiny. She described hiding him in the forest, moving him through hidden trails, and relying on intuition to avoid detection. "I couldn't risk anyone finding him," she whispered. "Not even the police at first. I had to be sure he was safe." Harris took notes, careful to document every word. The room was quiet, the only sound the soft padding of Rex's paws on the floor. Emma sat on a chair nearby, drawing another picture this time of Rex standing proudly beside the two children, sun shining behind them. Margaret looked at the drawing and smiled faintly. "She remembers him," she whispered. "She remembers her brother." Harris felt a lump in his throat. "She's a survivor," he said softly. "And she has you, Rex, and all of us to help her heal." Rex barked softly in response, as if understanding that the world had changed for the better because of him. The next days were a whirlwind of interviews, reports, and media coverage. Investigators expanded the search for the remaining network of traffickers. Ryan Calloway was questioned further, his lies unraveling under the weight of incontrovertible evidence. Margaret and James were placed under protective custody, ensuring the boys' safety while the investigation proceeded. Through it all, Harris never left Rex's side. He watched the dog interact with Emma, guiding her gently, sniffing her hand, letting her lean on him. Rex didn't just save lives. He taught them trust, resilience, and courage. The courtroom drama had shifted from a simple story of abduction and survival into a saga of protection, instinct, and revelation. Everyone who had witnessed Emma point at Rex that first day understood something fundamental. Sometimes, heroes come on four legs, without words, without argument, acting purely on instinct. By the end of the week, the public's perception of the case had transformed. The media coverage highlighted the K-9 hero, the rediscovered child, and the courage of Margaret Hayes. Fundraisers and support networks sprang up to aid both Emma and James as they began their recovery. But Harris knew the investigation was far from over. There were still questions. How deep the network went, who had been involved in covering up James's disappearance, and why the evidence had been overlooked in the first place. He looked at Rex, lying calmly on the floor. "We've got more work to do, partner," he said softly. Rex's eyes met his, steady and unwavering. Harris knew that together, they would uncover every hidden truth, no matter how long it took. And in that moment, Harris understood the full weight of Emma's words from that courtroom. "He kept me warm." Not just physically, emotionally, spiritually. Rex had preserved life and hope, where darkness had threatened to consume it. The boy, the girl, the dog, and the woman all had survived. And now, the next chapter of justice was about to unfold. The early morning fog clung to the streets of Portland like a shroud, softening the sounds of the city. Officer Daniel Harris drove to the precinct with Rex perched alertly beside him, ears twitching with every passing siren and honking horn. They had been summoned to a special task force meeting. The local police, federal investigators, and Child Protection Services had joined forces to uncover the larger network responsible for Emma and James's abduction. Inside the conference room, maps of the city and surrounding counties were pinned across the walls. Lines connecting addresses, sightings, and abandoned properties stretched like spider webs. Harris studied each detail meticulously, noting connections that had gone unnoticed during the original investigation. "Ryan Calloway is only a small part of the network," one of the federal agents said. "We believe there are multiple operatives coordinating across states. Some may still be active." Harris nodded, eyes narrowing. "Then we move fast. Every hour counts. Rex and I are going back to the original locations, the forest, the abandoned sites, anywhere Ryan may have coordinated. There are clues we missed the first time." Rex wagged his tail softly, as if acknowledging the mission. Harris patted him. "Let's find the rest, partner. Time to finish what we started." The forest, now dappled with early sunlight, felt different during the daytime. Shadows shifted between the trees, revealing more evidence than Harris had noticed before. Broken branches formed makeshift paths, faint footprints from months ago, still etched into the mud. Harris followed, notebook in hand, photographing every clue. Rex darted ahead, sniffing and pausing, alert for scents that only he could detect. Harris remembered Emma's drawings, the shadow of a boy, the woman hiding behind a tree. The forest itself seemed to hold memories, etched into the soil, waiting to be read. Rex stopped suddenly near a narrow ravine, growling softly. Harris approached cautiously. There, partially buried beneath leaves and sticks, was a small bundle of papers. Carefully, Harris pulled them out. Maps, handwritten notes, coded schedules, proof of organized abductions spanning multiple states. The handwriting was familiar. Ryan's signature appeared on some, but others were in different scripts. Harris's pulse quickened. "This is it, Rex. This is what we needed." The dog barked softly, tail sweeping the ground. Harris felt a surge of hope. The network was unraveling. Back at the precinct, Harris compiled the new evidence into a digital dossier. Every name, every property, every potential victim was cross-referenced with ongoing investigations. The task force moved swiftly, coordinating arrests and protective measures. Ryan Calloway, cornered by undeniable proof, began to crack, revealing partial names and locations. Meanwhile, Allison struggled with the weight of what she now knew. Sitting in her living room, she watched Emma and James play side by side, unaware of the horrors that had stalked them. James, though traumatized, had taken to Emma quickly, as if instinctively recognizing her as family. The bond was immediate, powerful, and healing. "Do you think they'll really catch everyone?" Allison asked Harris one evening, her voice barely above a whisper. Harris knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We will. It won't be easy, and it won't be fast. But we've got evidence, witnesses, and Rex. We're not leaving anyone behind." Allison nodded, tears in her eyes. "He saved them. Both of them." Harris glanced at Rex, lying beside Emma and James, wagging his tail. The dog's calm confidence was a stark contrast to the chaos around them. "Yeah," Harris said softly. "He did." Over the next several days, the task force executed coordinated raids across multiple states. Abandoned properties, warehouses, and safe houses were uncovered, each filled with traces of the network's operations. Evidence of planning, surveillance, and attempted abductions was documented. Each location reinforced a chilling realization. Ryan Calloway had been just one piece in a dangerous puzzle. Harris was constantly on edge, moving from site to site with Rex. The dog remained vigilant, sniffing out hidden compartments, alerting Harris to anything out of place. At one location, Rex pawed insistently at a floorboard. Harris pried it open to reveal a hidden compartment containing more files, photographs of children, coded schedules, and identification cards. Each discovery tightened the net around the network. By midweek, several arrests had been made. Federal agents moved quickly to detain key operatives, while local law enforcement secured victims in safe custody. The scope of the network was horrifying, but Harris couldn't help feeling pride. Their persistence, coupled with Rex's instincts, had prevented further tragedy. Amid the investigation, Emma and James's recovery progressed. Social workers arranged therapy sessions, but it was clear that Rex played the most significant role in their emotional healing. The children followed him everywhere, seeking comfort and reassurance. Emma often whispered to him, "You found my brother too, didn't you?" And Rex would nuzzle her gently, a silent acknowledgement. Harris watched these moments with a swelling heart. This wasn't just a case about abduction. It was about survival, trust, and the unbreakable bond between children and a loyal canine partner. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light through the blinds of the precinct, Harris reviewed a new piece of evidence, an encrypted notebook recovered from one of the safe houses. Using notes from Ryan and Margaret in the previous raids, he began to decode schedules and operational plans. Each page revealed the network's hierarchy, revealing more suspects yet to be located. Rex lay nearby, head resting on Harris's knee, eyes bright and watchful. Harris whispered, "We're getting closer, partner. Every name, every place. We'll bring them down." The dog let out a low, contented growl, as if agreeing. The emotional weight of the case grew heavier each day. Allison struggled to explain the full extent of the truth to Emma and James without scaring them. Each night, she watched them sleep, noticing the subtle ways trauma lingered, flinches at sudden noises, tight grips on Rex, hesitant glances at shadows in the room. Harris advised caution, but also emphasized hope. "Children are resilient," he said. "They've already survived more than most people ever will. With Rex and family around, they'll be okay." Yet even Harris knew that this was just the beginning. The network's reach, its cruelty, and the psychological scars left on these children would take months, perhaps years, to fully heal. By the end of the week, the task force had successfully apprehended several high-level operatives. The coordinated effort was a major breakthrough in dismantling the network. Media coverage highlighted the bravery of law enforcement and the extraordinary role of Rex, the canine hero who had saved not just one, but 2 children. Still, Harris remained vigilant. He knew Ryan and others had followers, loopholes, hidden channels, and silent collaborators who might attempt to evade capture. Each step forward required caution, strategy, and unrelenting focus. Harris paused one evening, looking at a framed photograph of Emma and James with Rex. The children's innocent smiles contrasted sharply with the dark undercurrents of the case. Yet in that moment, he realized something profound. Despite all the darkness they had faced, hope had prevailed. The bond between human and canine, the courage of a mother, and the instinct to protect had altered the course of these children's lives forever. Rex, sensing Harris's reflection, rested his head on his lap. Harris stroked the dog's fur, murmuring softly, "We've done good, boy. We've done good. But the work isn't finished. Not yet." Outside, the city slept under a thin blanket of fog, unaware of the hidden horrors now exposed and the lives forever changed by courage, instinct, and loyalty. Harris and Rex had not only uncovered a criminal network, but had also restored hope to 2 children who might otherwise have been lost. And yet, as Harris closed the files for the night, he couldn't shake the feeling that the forest, the shadows, and the secrets it held were far from exhausted. Someone else, perhaps another hidden participant, still remained unseen. He glanced down at Rex, who stared back with unwavering focus. Harris whispered, "Tomorrow we finish this." The dog's soft growl was all the confirmation he needed. The courtroom smelled faintly of polished wood and old leather, a stark contrast to the tension that thickened the air. Officer Daniel Harris walked in with Rex at his side, tail low but alert, ears pricked for every sound. The room was packed. Media, spectators, law enforcement officials, and family members crowded the benches. Today was different. The full extent of the network responsible for Emma and James's abduction would be presented. Harris's eyes scanned the room, resting for a moment on Allison and the children. Emma clutched Rex's paw tightly, her small body trembling with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. James, seated beside her, mirrored her expression, eyes wide as he looked at the judge. Harris gave them both a gentle nod, a silent promise that the truth would finally come to light. The prosecutor, Diane Porter, rose. "Your Honor, the evidence presented here today establishes not only the abduction of Emma Clark and her brother, James Clark, but also the existence of a coordinated network involved in child trafficking across multiple states." The judge adjusted his glasses. "Proceed, Officer Harris." Harris stepped forward, voice steady but firm. "Your Honor, members of the jury, what you witnessed in this courtroom yesterday, Emma's bravery, Rex's heroism is only the beginning. The full story involves not just one man, but an organized network that preyed on vulnerable families. This network was systematic, methodical, and dangerous." The jury leaned forward, eyes fixed on Harris. Every photograph, map, and locket he displayed told a story of preparation, concealment, and desperate survival. The forest photographs, the hidden footprints, the 2 lockets all connected in a web that revealed the truth. "This is Margaret Hayes," Harris continued, gesturing toward the woman seated with the children. She acted to protect James, Emma's twin brother, hiding him from those who would harm him. She remained in the forest until law enforcement could ensure their safety. Rex's instincts were crucial to locating both children and preserving their lives. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled notes furiously. The photographs of James, pale but unharmed, and Emma, holding Rex tightly, were displayed on the projector for all to see. The judge called for order. "Proceed, Officer Harris." Harris clicked the remote to the next slide maps of the network's safe houses and operational routes. Each of these locations has been investigated, resulting in arrests, evidence collection, and the dismantling of significant parts of the network. Ryan Calloway was only one operative. There are others, and we now have enough information to continue the investigation and prevent further harm. At the defense table, Ryan's face was pale, eyes darting nervously between Harris, the judge, and the projected evidence. His attorney attempted to interject, but the judge silenced him with a firm gavel strike. "Let the witness finish." Harris then focused on the children. Emma and James survived not only because of courage and instinct, but because of a K-9 partner who responded to threats invisible to human eyes. Rex's actions ensured that both children were found unharmed, providing the critical window needed to apprehend the network and secure justice. Allison's eyes filled with tears. She squeezed Emma's hand. Emma, quiet for once, looked directly at Rex, whispering, "You saved my brother too." The dog nudged her hand gently, almost knowingly, as if acknowledging her words. Following Harris's testimony, the jury was shown security footage from one of the recently uncovered safe houses. The footage was shaky, rain-streaked, and partially obscured by shadows. Yet it was undeniable. Ryan and other operatives moving children and documents, orchestrating abductions with cold precision. The courtroom murmured again, the weight of the revelation sinking in. Diane Porter summarized the findings. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is why your verdict today matters. Not just for Emma and James, but for every child who could have been harmed if this network remained unchecked." The judge nodded solemnly. "We will recess until the jury delivers their verdict. In the meantime, all parties are reminded that safety and decorum are paramount." Outside the courtroom, the media frenzy was intense. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and bystanders tried to get a glimpse of the children and Rex. Harris, with Allison and the children, moved carefully through the crowd. Reporters shouted about Rex, the K-9 hero, while others focused on the shocking revelations about the network. Harris ignored most of it. His attention was on Emma and James, ensuring they felt safe and supported. The children, though overwhelmed, clung to Rex as if drawing courage from him. Margaret walked beside them, protective and weary, knowing the legal battle was far from over, but reassured that justice was finally moving forward. Over the next few days, Harris worked closely with the task force to ensure the remaining network operatives were apprehended. Each new arrest brought a mix of relief and tension. Some suspects resisted violently. Others tried to flee. Yet the coordinated effort, guided by evidence Harris and Rex had helped uncover, proved successful. Meanwhile, Emma and James began attending therapy sessions together, their bond strengthening with each day. They drew pictures, told stories, and slowly the trauma began to recede, replaced with moments of laughter and trust. Harris often visited, sitting quietly as the children interacted with Rex. The dog's presence was grounding, a constant source of comfort and security. Allison watched them play and whispered to Harris, "I don't know how we'll ever repay you or him." She nodded toward Rex. Harris smiled faintly. "You don't have to. Just keep them safe. That's all that matters." The final courtroom day arrived. Harris presented the jury with the most comprehensive evidence yet. Photos, lockets, security footage. and detailed testimony from Margaret Hayes. Every piece corroborated Emma's memory, the children's drawings, and Rex's actions. The jury listened intently, visibly moved by the story of survival, courage, and instinct. When the verdict was announced, a hush fell over the courtroom. The judge spoke clearly, deliberately. "We find the defendant guilty on all counts. Furthermore, the network responsible for these crimes will continue to be investigated and dismantled in full." Applause broke out, though Harris kept his focus on the children. Emma and James were hugged tightly by Allison and Margaret. Tears streamed freely, mingling relief with lingering trauma. Yet in that moment, hope and justice triumphed. Rex, ever vigilant, nudged the children gently, tail wagging softly. Harris knelt beside the dog, whispering, "We did it, partner." All of it? The public celebration of Rex's heroism followed quickly. Social media buzzed with photos of the dog, the children, and the task force. Local news outlets hailed him as a national hero, a symbol of courage, instinct, and loyalty. Emma's simple words, "He kept me warm," were repeated across headlines, capturing the essence of his role. But Harris knew the story was more than media attention. It was about lives changed forever, about healing, about courage in the face of unimaginable fear. He watched as Emma and James played together under the careful supervision of Allison and Margaret, Rex always nearby. The bond between the children and the dog had grown unbreakable, a living testament to the truth they had all uncovered. Even as the investigation continued, with minor loose ends still being tied up, Harris felt a rare sense of completion. Justice had been served, and the children were safe. Yet he remained vigilant. He knew darkness often lingered where it was least expected. Harris reached down and patted Rex's head. "We've done good, partner. They're safe. And that's all that matters." Rex leaned into his hand, tail thumping softly. The K9 hero had completed another mission, but his presence remained a steady reassurance, a reminder that courage and loyalty could overcome even the darkest shadows. The morning sun bathed Portland in a warm, golden light, illuminating streets that had witnessed the unraveling of a dangerous network and the survival of two remarkable children. Officer Daniel Harris walked slowly through the park, Rex trotting beside him, alert and calm. The dog's ears twitched with every sound, birds chirping, distant traffic, and the faint laughter of children playing nearby. Today was not about arrests, investigations, or courtrooms. Today was about closure, healing, and the enduring bond between human and canine. Harris spotted Allison and the children waiting near a wooden bench beneath a towering oak. Emma ran toward him first, Rex trailing closely. James followed, small feet pattering against the grass, eyes wide but bright with newfound confidence. The children's laughter rang across the park, a melody that contrasted sharply with the fear and tension of the past months. Harris knelt as Emma reached him, her tiny hands clutching his sleeves. "Rex saved us," she said quietly, looking up at the dog with awe. Rex nudged her gently, tail wagging slowly, ears pricked, as if acknowledging her words. "Yes, he did," Harris said softly. "Both of you. And you've been so brave through all of this." James clutched Margaret's hand, still wary, but beginning to trust the world beyond the shadows of his hiding. Margaret knelt to his level. "You're safe now, James. You don't have to be afraid anymore." For a moment, the group simply breathed in the serenity of the day. The tension that had gripped them, the fear of abduction, the shadow of the network felt distant, though Harris knew it could never fully disappear. Healing, however, had begun. Over the next several weeks, the family adjusted to life, with the children reunited and safe. Emma and James attended therapy sessions together, with Rex always present, offering silent comfort. They laughed, drew pictures, and explored the world with a cautious curiosity, guided by Allison and Margaret. Harris often visited, checking in quietly, ensuring the children's needs were met. Each visit revealed subtle progress. Emma no longer flinched at sudden noises. James began to speak more freely about the forest, and both children displayed an uncanny sense of security whenever Rex was near. One afternoon, Emma handed Harris a drawing. It depicted her, James, and Rex standing beneath the sun, with trees around them and no shadows. "We're together now," she whispered, voice trembling slightly. Harris smiled, feeling the weight of those simple words. "Yes, you are, and you always will be." Rex barked softly in response, tail sweeping the ground, as if approving her sentiment. Meanwhile, the legal process continued in parallel. Ryan Calloway was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. His role in the network exposed fully, thanks to Harris's evidence and Rex's intervention. Other operatives were arrested or faced ongoing investigations. The judicial system, slow but deliberate, ensured that justice extended beyond immediate punishment, dismantling the network and preventing further harm to children in its reach. The media continued to cover the story, highlighting Rex's heroism, the children's courage, and Margaret Hayes' selfless bravery. Yet despite the headlines and public attention, Harris and the family remained focused on quiet healing. Walks in the park, drawing and storytelling sessions, and evenings spent reading under soft lamplight. One evening, Allison gathered the children in the living room. "I want you both to know something important," she began, voice soft but firm. "Rex didn't just save you once. He's kept you safe every day since. And he'll always be with you, watching over you." Emma's eyes sparkled. "He's like a superhero," she whispered. James nodded slowly, his small hand reaching to pat Rex gently. The dog leaned into the touch, calm and steady, his brown eyes reflecting understanding, loyalty, and quiet pride. Harris watched the scene unfold, a lump forming in his throat. This was the real victory: safety, trust, and a sense of normalcy returning to two children who had endured horrors most could never imagine. Months passed. Emma and James flourished. In school, their confidence growing alongside the bond they shared with Rex. Margaret and Allison worked together to ensure the children felt supported, while Harris continued to monitor the long-term investigation of the network's remnants. Each day brought reassurance. The children laughed more freely, slept more peacefully, and embraced a world that no longer held the shadows of fear. Harris occasionally reflected on the moments in the forest, the rain-soaked earth, the faint footprints, the rusted lockets. Rex had not just followed instinct. He had acted with precision, empathy, and courage beyond any ordinary canine. That night in the storm, in the darkness and chaos, Rex had found the truth when humans could not. The city recognized Rex's heroism formally in a small ceremony at the police precinct. Harris, Allison, Margaret, and the children attended, standing beside the canine who had changed their lives forever. Awards, certificates, and official proclamations were presented, but Rex remained calm, nose twitching, eyes bright, unaware of the attention, but fully attuned to the children at his side. Emma hugged Rex tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. The dog leaned into her embrace, tail wagging, ears twitching. James, shy but aware, patted Rex on the back, murmuring, "You're my hero, too." Harris felt a swell of pride and relief. Every obstacle, every fear, every shadow in the forest had led to this moment: survival, justice, and the reaffirmation of hope. Even as public attention waned, Harris knew that the story's true impact lay in the quiet, unseen moments. Emma's laughter echoing in the living room, James drawing alongside his sister, Margaret watching over them with a mother's careful eye, and Rex ever present, a guardian of instinct, courage, and love. One evening, Harris walked the children to the forest edge, Rex trotting beside him. "Do you remember the night?" he asked gently. Emma nodded. "Rex found us," she said, voice firm. James added softly, "He saved me too." Harris knelt, scratching Rex behind the ears. "That's right," he said. "And you both were brave enough to trust him and yourselves. That's why you're here today." Rex barked softly, tail sweeping the grass. Harris smiled. "You'll never forget that, will you?" Emma shook her head. "Never," she whispered. James nodded solemnly beside her. The forest, once a place of fear, now felt safe, a living memory of courage, hope, and the unbreakable bond between children and a hero on 4 legs. In the months that followed, Harris continued his work, ensuring that any loose ends of the network were resolved, while Emma and James continued to heal. The bond between the siblings grew stronger, and Rex remained their constant companion, guardian, and silent teacher of resilience. Allison often reflected on how a small child's instinctive trust and a dog's unwavering loyalty had revealed truths that might have otherwise remained hidden. Margaret, quietly watching over James, found solace in knowing her protection had not been in vain. And for Harris, the story of Emma, James, and Rex became more than a case. It was a testament to bravery, compassion, and the extraordinary ways in which love, instinct, and courage could save lives. Rex, lying quietly beneath the window of the living room, ears twitching with every sound, seemed to understand the magnitude of what had transpired. His gaze swept over the children, then over Harris, then back to the setting sun. He had fulfilled his duty with precision, loyalty, and heart, and in doing so, he had left a legacy that would never be forgotten. The city slept peacefully, the shadows of the past replaced by the light of survival and hope. Emma and James were safe, loved, and free. And at the center of it all, the dog who had kept them warm, who had found them when all seemed lost, remained silent, steadfast, and eternal in his heroism.